Welcome to the Cups Mission Podcast, where we share powerful stories of how God is moving by rescuing families and transforming families in the Dominican Republic, Malawi, or Mexico. Every episode, you'll hear stories that happen throughout the globe and how you are able to connect those stories with the truth of God's Word. Whether you're a longtime supporter or just discovering who we are, we're so glad you're here. Let's step into what God is doing through Cups Mission. Hey, you guys, Jack Eason here. Welcome to today's podcast. So glad that you are here to join us. We want to be people who help one another instead of harm each other, build bridges instead of barriers through the power of community, right? All to make an impact for the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm so excited about today's episode. Very special guest with us, pastor and author Drew Hunter is with us. Drew, good to have you with us today, man. Yeah, know that you're busy. We're grateful for you taking a little bit of time. Drew knows a lot about, has written about friendship and power of community. And let's just jump right in. I know that your book, you talked about, in our culture, it's maybe challenging for people to pull this off, it seems like. But you've talked about the power of friendship and really the necessity of friendship, that it's not optional. How did you kind of get drawn to that topic?
Yeah, so I was first thinking about it as a topic itself when I was studying the book of Proverbs a number of years ago, and I was preparing to teach through the book of Proverbs. So I was reading through it and trying to collect all the themes that seem most important to the book of Proverbs. And I was expecting it to say things about marriage and work and relationships in general. And I was struck by how many pointed, direct, insightful statements there were about friendship in particular, not just community in general. And so then I spent a week studying that, and then thinking also then about John 15 with Jesus calling us his friends. And I realized that though I have had good friendships and I've known that John 15 exists, I've not directly, consciously, functionally related to Jesus in terms of friendship. And nor have I really thought through what it means to be a good friend. And so ever since then, the topic just kind of didn't let me go.
You even came up with a definition of friendship. See if I get the quote right. You said it's an affectionate bond forged between two people as they journey through life together with openness and trust.
Yeah.
How did you pull that together? Obviously some biblical background, but was there things in your own life or just trying to develop friendships that helped you come up with that definition?
Yeah, so two things. So one, the definition itself was my attempt at synthesizing what Proverbs especially had articulated about friendship. And so there's several attributes of affection and love. There's constancy and loyalty. There's openness and speaking truth to one another. And there's trust that's assumed, because Proverbs says it negatively, that the whisperer separates close friends. And so there must be trust there. And so trying to put that together in a sentence and have all that there. And then, of course, in my own life, thinking through what a healthy, good friendship is. And as Proverbs has kind of mapped onto that, in my life has mapped onto friendship, that articulates that it's a journey together over time through experiences that we experience the constancy and the truth and trust and affection of friendship.
You know, what drew me to you and I think to your book and to your writing was a quote that you had, because you kind of trace this whole idea of friendship back to the very beginning at creation in the Garden of Eden, through the fall and through the redemption. The quote was, I believe it was, the first problem in the world was not sin, but solitude. And man, I was like, whoa, that's huge. How did you discover that? Obviously, it's already there in God's Word, but what drew you and kind of pull that out for a launching pad for what you've been writing about?
Yeah, so with any topic, we want to make sure we're thinking through of it in terms of biblical theology. Creation, redemption, or fall, redemption, new creation, or consummation. And, all the central themes of the Bible run through that storyline. And so that's part of a framework for thinking through things Christianly. So I was trying to think about friendship in terms of that. And then just soaking in and reading Genesis 1-3, and trying to just notice where we see friendship here. And of course, being made in God's image, in Genesis 1, and we're made in the image of the triune God. In Genesis 1, he's plural, let us make man in our image. Then he makes us in the plural, as making them in his image. He commissions us to a communal task. He declares it good, 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 good. And then so turning the page to Genesis 2, it was just so striking when having friendship in mind then and community in mind, that he said it's not good that man should be alone. And previously I'd only thought of that in terms of Adam needing a wife, a spouse, which is certainly true and certainly going on there. But it is a general broad statement. It is not good that man should be alone, period. And especially in light of the fact that we're made in God's image. So in Genesis 1, it overviews the whole creation week in 7 days. And on the sixth day, he creates Adam and Eve. Then in Genesis 2, it rewinds back into that sixth day to show how he made Adam and Eve. And that's when we find out he made Adam first and declared it not good. So it was just startling to read through it again with kind of a fresh lens, thinking about community and friendship, and then recognizing that, wow, this is before Genesis 3. Sin is not yet here. He has not done Adam's done nothing wrong. He's just not complete yet because he's alone. And the Lord declares it with strong language, not good. And so then that allows us to step back and recognize that to be alone, that was the first, if you can use the word problem, it's not yet fully perfect in the sense of complete yet. And the Lord declares it not good. So it's just startling. And then it wakes us up to the importance then of friendship, and then just how dehumanizing it is to be alone or isolated.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that is a massive, mind-blowing concept when you actually dig in there and think about it. I'm so glad that you wrote about that and you continue to talk about it and speak about it and
Mm-hmm.
preach about it, because obviously we both know our world is in suffering, even post-pandemic now, for 5 years on the other side of the worldwide pandemic. Idea of loneliness, which to me is even more increased in transience. What strategies do you think we're missing that we could get from not even just the creations part, but all the way into throughout Scripture, and maybe even just practical strategies you may have to help us overcome loneliness and dive deeper into friendship?
Yeah, so that's obviously an important question for us living in a world that clearly, um, we have tendencies in our own heart that work against friendship, because sin is by definition antisocial. And we have this curve inward, as Martin Luther called it, rather than curved outward toward God and others. So that's going to be a problem in any culture. Yet we have a particular problem today because, you can just Google it. There's study after study after study in sociology has shown that there is a sharp, drastic decline in friendship and community in the past generation, and especially the past 25 years or so. And people have fewer and fewer friends. Half the people say their relationships are not meaningful, or no one knows them at all. So we really do need strategy. So there's several, a few central ones. One doesn't sound like a strategy, but it is important. And that is just to personally cultivate a high esteem for friendship. Part of that's done by looking at Genesis 1 and seeing we're made in God's image. And that means that we're in an image of the triune God of communal love. God did not make us because he needed us, but because he wanted to share his fellowship and communion with us. And then it's not good for us to be alone. And then Jesus came to restore friendship. He's the friend of sinners. The cross itself is an act of cosmic friendship. He said that it's the greatest act of love. A man lays down his life for his friends. You're my friends. And so when we just recognize how highly we should esteem friendship, then that changes us to want to pursue it more in all sorts of ways. And so it's really the foundational strategy, is recognizing that we're made for friendship with God and one another. And then from there, very practically, there's a number of them. Here's a few. One would be to schedule it. So anything that we make a priority in life, it usually doesn't happen unless we schedule it. If you want to exercise or lift weights, you don't rely on spontaneity. If you have a family and you want to prioritize having meals together, you don't wait for that to spontaneously happen. You schedule it. If you want to know God through the word and prayer, you have to schedule it, right? And so we need to schedule and build friendship into rhythms of our life. And there's a lot of ways we can do that. We eat 21 meals a week. Why not pick one or two or three, or just start with one to have with someone else? Maybe if you have a family, invite another family over. If you are going to work, grab breakfast before work with someone. pick one day a week for lunch and have lunch with a coworker or a friend or a fellow church member. And then just build these rhythms into your schedule. And it could just be that you reserve, Monday lunches for anyone, and you just have people rotate through. It could be, I do a number of things. One of the things I do, I even had just lunch today with a friend. We have lunch or coffee or a drink every 2 weeks. Now we get together casually as friends and hanging out other times, but we make sure that every 2 weeks we're connecting on the important things of life. And we're talking about, how are you doing? How's your joy? How's your family? How's your sin? How's your not, are you repenting, right? Walking in the light together, and that grows our bond. So rhythms are important in schedules. Also, don't overlook the small things. There's been a study that showed how much we think that people, when we reach out to them just to send them a text or give a phone call or send them a note just because, we think that they won't value it, or it's an interruption, or they don't have time for it. And they interviewed the other side of that, and the people, how much would you appreciate it, or do you appreciate it if a friend sends you a note just because? And it was amazing how people said it was the highlight of their day. So we underestimate the power of that. So just get used to sending notes, sending texts, giving phone calls, leaving a voicemail, and not because you need something, but just because. And learn to express esteem and encouragement and honor to people. Just say, this is why I was thinking of you. I was reminded of something you did before. I loved that. I can't wait till we see each other next. Here's something I was thinking about, I respect about you. So just filling relationships with encouragement. So those are a couple strategies. Getting face to face is critical, of course, but sending quick touch points and then prioritizing a rhythm of face to face is significant. There's a dozen or so other kind of core strategies, but that's a start.
Man, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now the book that you wrote that I kind of got turned on to, I think, was about friendship, and that came out. Remind me what year that came out.
That was 2018.
Okay, 2018. So now that we have had a few years pass by, if you were to write a sequel or expand, is there a new chapter or emphasis that you might add to that book?
That's a thoughtful question. Two things come to mind. One is I would bring more reflection on the cultural challenges to friendship. So the three that I highlighted are our mobility or transience. We move a lot, and that really does hinder us from putting in roots places. We even give up trying, and then we lose touch with people in the past. And then technology, and just how we can become dependent on digital connection rather than face to face. And then time. We're all so busy, right? When the truth is, some of us actually aren't that busy. It's a priority thing, and there's all sorts of strategies to welcome people into life. However, there are a lot more cultural aspects that I had not meditated or thought enough or deeply enough on when I wrote the book, that just help add a little bit more. So, for instance, the change in how we view even masculinity as men, and how that's changed over the past 200 years in the West through the influence of the Industrial Revolution and Darwin and Freud, leave us with a view of masculinity where certain attributes that we now think of as exclusively feminine are actually important for friendship and were typical with men who had been shaped by Christianity and the Bible for centuries that we've now left, like vulnerability and expressing affection and physical touch. And then now there's even a suspicion of romance if you do that, and which it used to just be marks of friendship. So that's one. Another is the fact that we live such disintegrated lives, meaning that especially pre-industrial revolution, but even we get glimpses of this like at college, where all your spheres of life overlap. So the people you go to church with are the same, or the same ones in your campus ministry. They're the same ones you go to class with. They're the same ones you're in a dorm with. They're the same ones you spend time with or do a sport with. And then that's why college can be such a microwave for friendship. But then as people grow older and hit their mid-30s, all of a sudden they're driving 20 minutes east for their work. And then they drive, 10 minutes west for their church community. And those people are driving from the other direction 10 or 20 minutes. And then their neighborhood, no one in their neighborhood is part of either of those. And then any hobby they do isn't part of it. So no one in any sphere of life actually overlaps with the others. And that makes friendship really hard, actually, to develop over the everyday rhythms of life. And so that's a big factor. Yeah.
No, that's so good. Sorry to interrupt. I just thinking when you said that, it also makes it hard. Talk a little bit just from your experience in your research, it makes it hard to be on mission as a community. You know, I think about the
For
passage
sure.
in Ecclesiastes: two are better than one, and the cord of three strands. And it forces us a lot of times. It seems like to think at least that we have a solo Christianity mindset or Lone Ranger mentality. How are you seeing? Obviously, friendship to me and spiritual growth can be closely connected. How would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that was very insightful. So, a couple things come to mind. Number one is that in the Gospel of John, where Jesus calls us his friends, he actually does explain also what the local church community relationships are supposed to be like and how mission happens. And okay, so what should our relationships look like with other Christians? He says, love one another as I've loved you. And the world will know you're my disciples by your love for one another. And then, so, okay, we know that. Love one another as he's loved us. Well, how did he love us? We may be familiar with the next step. Well, he died for us. Okay, so sacrifice. Well, actually, in context, he adds another layer because he says this in John 13. And then in John 15, he repeats this love command for the new covenant. And then he defines it in terms of sacrificial friendship love because he says, this is the command I give you. Love one another as I've loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends. And then the one another's in the New Testament explain what this looks like. And you cannot fulfill the one another's unless you're doing this outside of programs where you gather with 200 people or something, right? It has to be everyday life as well, forgiving one another, bearing each other's burdens, and so forth. And so there's a real practical, everyday friendship love that Jesus is calling the Christians to have. And then connected to mission, he says, this is how the world is going to know you're my disciples, which means they have to see our friendship love. He includes the same thing in his prayer in John 17, when he prays that the world would know that he was sent by the Father by seeing the unity and the oneness of his people, which is continuing this theme of friendship love. And so, how is the world going to conclude that Jesus really is the Son of God? Well, according to these texts, they have to see the friendships of Christians, which that can't happen unless they're invited into them in some sense, and they're
Yeah.
experiencing them in a house, at a barbecue, at dinner, around a fire, sharing a hobby. They have to be invited into the shared life to be able to say names and say, well, Bill and Susan and Tony, like, I have seen how they love each other and how they love
Mm.
me, which means the Jesus that they're telling me about, it seems we're telling the gospel as well, is real because
Yeah.
only he can bring this kind of powerful community. So friendship is one of the greatest powers for evangelism that we have.
So good, man. Last question that I've got: what
Mhm.
in the writing of the book and since the book in your own ministry, are there personal friendships or maybe friendship struggles or challenges that continue to influence you as you're working this out through your own faith journey?
Yeah, I'm so grateful for. I was just thinking yesterday of the friendships that I have right now and how much they make life joyful.
Mm.
So just last night, I made it's a mix of wisdom and folly. Probably we have a friend who had never seen Lord of the Rings, which I've seen it like, I don't know, 16, 20 times, something like this. And so finally a few of us are like, you're going to watch this. So we did that last night, way too late, but it was such a joy to be together. And so, yeah, just building out time to enjoy friendship and then for freeing my wife up for friendship as well and talking with my boys about friends and just making sure we have space to enjoy friendship both together and with others together, and then freeing my wife up to take a trip and to go out and not feel like she's like leaving me in a lurch or something like this, but delighting in it. So that's been an added joy over the years of just building this into life, in everyday life, and enjoying it together. And yeah, there have been struggles as well, keeping up with friends that are distant. So I even have a little prayer card I was looking at yesterday morning with my friends, and I was thinking about like, how am I doing with each of these as far as maintaining these friendships? Because sometimes it's hard in distance, and then I went through that and saw a couple friends. I was like, I've really not, I've neglected them, and they've even reached out to me different ways, and I've been slower to respond. And so those are a couple things, just navigating how different seasons of life whether it's moving or someone gets married and have kids and it changes availability, or there's hurt in a relationship, and trying to overcome that is just filled with challenges. Totally worth it, but not easy always.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Hey, we've been chatting with Drew Hunter. Thank you, Drew, for your time. I know you're busy. If people wanted to follow up and reach out, continue the conversation, tell us how we can find your book or connect with you online.
Yeah, sure. So the book's available on Amazon. It's published through Crossway, so crossway.org. You can find it there as well. There's an audiobook version. The audiobook actually has an additional chapter on a few more practical strategies at the end. And then I post probably, once every month or something on X, but Drew F. Hunter is X. Maybe I'll be more frequent over time.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you for joining us for today's podcast. Again, we want to be people who help one another instead of harm one another, build bridges instead of barriers. Why? So that we can make more of an impact as a community for the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is a podcast for the Cups Mission. If you want more information, or if you want to download kind of a PDF worksheet to dialogue about what Drew and I have been talking about today, you can find that online at cravingcommunity.com. Spread the word and share what we've been talking about so we can build our community to help other people be on mission for Jesus. God bless you guys. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Cups Mission Podcast. We hope you've been inspired by how God is rescuing children and transforming families. If you want to learn more, get involved, or support what God is doing in the Dominican Republic, Malawi, or Mexico, visit us at cupsmission.com and see what God is doing. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might need to hear it. Until next time, keep praying that God continues all across the world.